Hello, my name is Denise Edwards. I work with the government of Dominica as a permanent secretary, and I am a TADAT assessor. Welcome to Module 3. As you have seen, the first two modules were introductory in nature. Module 3, the current one, is the first substantive module. It deals with the first of the 9 performance outcome areas, the POAs, as we call them. Module 3 deals with POA 1, which is the integrity of the registered taxpayer base. At the conclusion of this module, you will be conversant with all aspects of this POA, including international good practices. You will be equipped to conduct TADAT assessments for POA 1. You'll learn the scoring criteria that will tell you whether a particular tax administration should be scored an A, B, C, or D for a particular dimension, according to the evidence you've gathered. And you'll then be able to score the indicators for this POA. Finally, you will understand what evidence you should gather and what questions you should ask to be able to conduct an objective assessment of this performance area. This is your first step to becoming an expert TADAT assessor. So let's move on. Let us start with the desired outcome. A fundamental first step in administering taxes is taxpayer registration and identification. Registration and identification of each taxpayer underpin all the key administrative processes associated with filing, payment, audit, assessment, and collection. So the desired outcome for this POA is that all businesses, individuals, and other entities that are required to register are included in the taxpayer registration base. Sometimes there are entities that are neither businesses nor individuals. They could be trusts or other kinds of agencies. If they are required to register, they should be registered. Also, all information on the database must be complete, accurate, and up to date. Now that we've looked at the desired outcome, let us discuss the international good practices in registering taxpayers. A well-functioning administration maintains accurate and reliable information to support communication with taxpayers, especially concerning filing, collection, and assessment. This support includes all relevant information about the taxpayer, such as the taxpayer's name, address, nature and size of business, tax obligation by taxpayer type, and so on. Also, a well-functioning tax administration periodically cleans the taxpayer database to remove inactive, invalid, or duplicate records, such as those of defunct businesses, bankrupt businesses, deceased persons, or people who have moved out of the country. The database needs to be cleaned periodically because inactive and erroneous records waste enforcement action and distort statistics. Invalid registration can be a vehicle for refund and other frauds. Another action that good tax administrations take is to identify and segregate dormant records, which are records of people or businesses that have just stopped filing because they have not been reminded or they are recalcitrant. They have to be identified and follow-up action should be taken. Well-functioning tax administrations have modern information technology systems that support a complete view of the taxpayer for the sake of compliance management. The assessing staff needs easy access to current and historical records of taxpayers' filing, payment, assessment, and account details for all the core taxes. The IT system should provide a national view of the entire taxpayer population, including reports of filing and payment statistics for the specific categories of taxpayers, which will enable management to design a national compliance strategy. And it goes without saying that the registration system should be able to interface with other subsystems with respect to filing, payment, and processing of returns. A trend in the past decade or so is for the IT system to be able to generate pre-filled returns or estimated assessments that are based on information that is already available to the tax administration through third-party information or from internal records. Well-functioning tax administrations maintain a system of universal and unique taxpayer identification numbers, or TIN, that can facilitate not only routine tax functions, but also detection of non-filers, third-party information, data matching, and exchange of information with other agencies. For all those purposes, a unique TIN is very important. And finally, a well-functioning tax administration pursues programs to detect and register businesses and individuals, including those representing high revenue risks. Those programs include the use of third-party information to help identify new businesses and existing non-registered businesses, the use of labor data and other statistics in specific industries to gauge the level of personal taxpayer registration, and very important, field surveys through the commercial districts to uncover businesses that have not registered or traders that have just started business and have not yet registered. Now that we've seen the good practices, let us look at the indicators for this POA. POA 1 has two high-level indicators. P1-1, which is accurate and reliable taxpayer information, and P1-2, which is knowledge of the potential taxpayer base. P1-1 has two dimensions: adequacy of information and accuracy of information. P1-2 has just one dimension: the extent of initiatives to detect unregistered businesses and individuals. Both P1-1 and P1-2 follow the M1 method of scoring. For a multi-dimensional indicator such as P1-1, M1 means that we use the weakest link. This is something that you've already come across in Module 1. Suppose, for example, that a country gets an A for adequacy of information, but only a C for accuracy of information. The overall score of the indicator P1-1 would be a C. Accuracy is the weakest link, so the good score on the adequacy of information is undermined by the poor score in accuracy. For a unidimensional indicator, such as P1-2 with only one dimension, the score of the dimension becomes the score of the indicator. Let us point out here the serial numbering of the 32 indicators. The first digit represents the POA, and the second digit represents the indicator. So indicator P1-2 means that this is an indicator for POA 1, and it is the second indicator in the series of 32 TADAT indicators. Indicator P6-19 would mean that the indicator is for POA 6, and it is the 19th indicator in the series of indicators. The same system is followed for all the indicators. You will notice, though, that the dimensions themselves are not numbered serially. They're numbered in respect of each indicator. Remember, indicator P1-1 has two dimensions. One on adequacy of taxpayer information and the other on accuracy of taxpayer information. Let us see how we score dimension P1-1, adequacy of information. Because an A score represents good practice, a country's tax administration gets an A score if all the following criteria are met. First, the taxpayer's database includes all relevant details for an individual. The data include the taxpayer's name, address, date of birth, and occupation. For a business, they include the date of incorporation, if it is a legal entity, nature of the business, information about associated entities, and related parties of the taxpayer. For example, data covers subsidiary companies, taxpayer segment, whether it is a small, medium, or large business, and the relevant economic sector. The filing and payment obligations applicable to the taxpayer should also be included. Second, the registration database is centralized and computerized. Third, each registered taxpayer has a unique and high integrity tax identification number or TIN for all core taxes, which means one number for all core taxes. This TIN should include a sequential number with a self-validating mechanism, a check digit. The next set of criteria involve the tax administration IT system. The IT subsystem for registration should be able to interface with other IT systems, for example, for payment, for filing, for audit, and so on. And it should provide a full view of the taxpayer to the frontline staff. Thus, the tax official should have quick access to current and historical records of the taxpayer's registration, filing, payment, assessment, and account details for all core taxes. Another important aspect is that the IT system should allow for deregistration and archiving of information in cases where taxpayers no longer exist or are defunct. The IT system should provide a countrywide view for management, which means that the IT system should enable effective design of national compliance programs through the generation of reports and aggregate data of filing and payment in respect of specific categories of taxpayer. In addition, the IT system should also provide an audit trail of user access. Still another good practice that enables an A score is that the IT system should be able to use taxpayer registration details to generate tax declarations. This practice is catching on very fast and should produce enforcement lists for tax officials to follow up on. And finally, the IT system should provide secure access to taxpayers to update their registration so that when taxpayers want to change the address, the occupation, or nature of their business, they can do so fairly easily. Meeting all those criteria will merit an A score. For a B score, certain things will be missing. The secure access will not be available for the taxpayer to update the registration information. The IT system will not be able to use taxpayer registration details to generate tax declarations. The registered taxpayer will have more than one TIN for different taxes. With those criteria not met, the tax administration can still get a B score. For a C score, you have all the items in a B score, besides taxpayer not having access to updating their information, the system having the ability to generate taxpayer declaration using registration details. The registration database must still include all the relevant details to achieve a C score. A lot of the other things are decentralized for a C score. The registered database is computerized but decentralized. Taxpayers may have more than one team, as was the case for BISCO, but the IT system still provides a full view. However, at a decentralized level, which means that the tax official in one province will be able to see taxpayers in that region, but not in other regions, if officials have to, for example, compare third-party information or the same taxpayer is registered in different regions. Likewise, because of the decentralization, the IT system provides management information only at the regional level. The interface with other systems and the registration and archiving are also at the decentralized level. With this situation, the tax administration gets a C-score. If even fewer than the C-score criteria are not present, the tax administration obviously will get a D score. Now that we know how to score the first dimension, adequacy of information, let us see how we score the second dimension, P1-1-2, about the accuracy of information in the taxpayer database. Again, because an A score represents good international practice, a tax administration gets an A if all the following situations are present. The tax administration has procedures to identify and remove inactive taxpayers, duplicate records, and false and invalid registrations from the active database, and that these procedures are routinely applied. Procedures for the identification and segregation of dormant records of stop filers and recalcitrant taxpayers, and that these actions are done routinely by the tax administration to facilitate follow-up action. There are procedures in place to ensure that applicants for registration are authentic and all applicants meet the legal requirements for registration. This would include, for example, carrying out proof of identity checks, and these procedures are routinely applied. The tax administration conducts routine verification of information held in the database through third-party cross-checking. And finally, management and audit reports indicate that the accuracy of the registration database is good. A country's tax administration gets a B score if most of the things required for A are present, but the verification of information through third-party cross-checking is done on a case-by-case basis. A tax administration gets a C score if the process of identification and segregation of dormant records, which is required for follow-up action, is only ad hoc. It's not done regularly. Similarly, a C score is given if the processes are ad hoc. The identification and removal of inactive records for dead persons and defunct businesses, checking the authenticity and proof of identity, and verification of information from a third party. A C score is also given if management and audit reports that explain whether the database is accurate are available, and these reports indicate a high level of accuracy of registration database for value-added taxpayers. Finally, if the minimum standards of C are not met, the information is not available, the tax administration gets a D score for this dimension. Remember that indicator P1-2, which is the knowledge of the potential taxpayer, is the second indicator under POA1. This indicator has only one dimension, which measures the extent of the initiatives taken by the tax administration to detect unregistered businesses and individuals. Because there is only one dimension for this indicator, the dimension becomes the indicator score. Now let's see how this indicator is scored. For an A score, there has to be systematic use of third-party information. the tax administration should have a program of random or targeted inspection of business premises and traders, as well as field surveys in order to detect potential taxpayers. The reports of the tax administration should show that actions have been taken and should also demonstrate results in detecting unregistered businesses and individuals. In a sense, the report should show that the tax administration has made effort either through inspections or through third-party information, and should show the results that were obtained. For BISCO, there is systematic use of third-party information, and the reports show what efforts have been made and what results have been. But there is neither a systematic program of inspection of business premises and traders to detect whether the new businesses have registered as taxpayers. There is no program to determine where new businesses, such as in new areas, new colonies, new malls, for instance, have come up. However, there is evidence of action taken over the past year to detect unregistered businesses and individuals. For Cisco, there's use of third-party information, but it is ad hoc. The reports are available, but they don't show that there's a systematic effort by the tax administration to detect unregistered businesses and individuals. Such efforts are ad hoc and they happen sporadically. And there is no program of inspection, as was the case for Obisco. However, there is evidence of action taken over the past year to detect unregistered businesses and individuals. You must be asking the question, so what information should I look for POA1 when I go for an assessment visit to a country? Your first step is to read Table 5 of the field guide, which gives a checklist of the questions to ask the tax authorities. It also gives examples of documents and other evidence to guide you in the information gathering process and field interviews related to POA1. Some information will need to be requested from the tax authorities in advance during the pre-assessment phase. Other information must be researched. There is a wealth of information that can be obtained from the tax administration's own website or from the website of the Auditor General's Office, the Ministry of Finance, or other agencies. Other evidence and information will need to be observed during the in-country visit and discussed during interviews with the tax authorities in the country. For POA1, look for information that answers the following questions. What are the legal requirements and processes for registration and updating a taxpayer identification number or TIN? What type of numbering system is used for TIN? Is the TIN unique for each taxpayer or for all core taxes? Are there separate numbers for different taxes? Does the registration database maintain all the basic information for the taxpayer? Is the registration database computerized or manual? If computerized, what are the capabilities of the IT system? Does the registration database provide a full view of the taxpayer's current and historical records with respect to all core taxes? Does the IT system provide a countrywide view of all the taxpayers in the country for all core taxes? Or does it provide only a regional view, a local view, or a view only of some taxes? Are other governmental agencies involved in the registration process of businesses and individuals? If so, what is the level of their interaction with the tax authority? Is there evidence to show that the procedures exist to routinely update the registration database and remove inactive, invalid, inaccurate, or duplicate records, or to segregate dormant records? Are there established processes that are systematically applied to ensure the accuracy of the registration database? For example, through the use of third-party information? Is proof of the applicant's identity verified to prevent bogus registration? Does the tax administration's compliance strategy incorporate initiatives to detect unregistered businesses and individuals? Are there demonstrable actions and results from these initiatives? Now let's discuss what sources you should look at if you are gathering the needed information. The main sources for gathering information on taxpayer registration will be the tax laws of the country, which will tell you who is and who's not required to register and what information the person has to include. There will be documents about policy and procedures related to the numbering system. We have already discussed the website and other publications of the tax authorities, as well as the website of other agencies involved in the registering of businesses and individuals. In addition, looking at the application form for tax registration and TIN is a useful exercise. You can engage in field observation of the registration database and interviews with tax authorities. You can even go and do field visits. A high-level map describing the configuration of the tax IT system, its functional capabilities, and registration databases is helpful. You should also look at management reports, strategy reports, internal audit reports, and external audit reports when you're gathering information and evidence for POA1. So now that you've gone through the detailed methodology for POA1, you've learned what the indicators and what the dimensions are for measuring the integrity of the taxpayer database. You've learned how the indicators and dimensions are scored. Finally, you've been told what to look for to gather evidence for scoring, whom to ask, and where to find useful information. Now you're all set to move on to POA2 in the next module, Module 4. Thank you.